I remember the exact moment everything started to feel wrong. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no slammed doors, just a quiet sentence delivered too smoothly. My dad made sure everything was handled before he passed, my stepmother Karen said, sitting across from me at the polished oak dining table I grew up eating cereal at every morning. There's nothing left to divide. Nothing. The word didn't land right. It didn't echo. It just sat there, heavy and dull, like something unfinished. I nodded like I understood, like I believed her, but I didn't. My father wasn't a careless man. He wasn't impulsive, and he definitely wasn't the kind of guy to leave things messy. He planned everything. Vacations booked months in advance, bills paid early, even birthday cards bought weeks before the actual date. He used to joke that chaos was for people who didn't love their families enough to prepare for them. So no, I didn't believe Karen, but I didn't say anything either. Not yet. The house smelled the same, lemon cleaner and faint cologne, but it felt like someone had rearranged the air. Karen had already started making changes, different throw pillows, new curtains. My dad's favorite leather chair had been moved slightly to the left, like she was trying to erase the invisible outline of him. "I know this is hard," she added, her voice soft but rehearsed, "but your father trusted me to take care of everything." That part almost made me laugh. Trusted her. I looked down at my hands, trying to keep my face neutral. "Right," I said, "of course." Because what was I supposed to do? Accuse her right there? Start a fight in the house that still felt like it belonged to him? I stayed for another hour, making small talk that felt like chewing glass. She offered coffee. I declined. She asked about my job in Chicago. I gave vague answers. Every second I sat there, I kept expecting something, some crack in her story, some hint that she was lying. But Karen was good. Too good. When I finally stood up to leave, she hugged me, and that's when I felt it. Her hand lingered on my back just a little too long. Not comforting, not warm, just possessive, like she had won something. I drove back to my hotel with my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. My dad had been gone for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and somehow everything about this already felt wrong. I didn't cry when he died, not at the hospital, not at the funeral. I felt numb, like my brain hadn't caught up yet. But sitting alone in that hotel room, staring at the generic artwork on the wall, something cracked. Because it wasn't just that he was gone, it was that I suddenly felt like I had been cut out of his life completely, and I knew that wasn't true. My dad and I weren't perfect, but we were close. We talked at least twice a week. He called me when something funny happened at work or when he tried a new recipe and messed it up. He even called me the night before he went into the hospital. That call kept replaying in my head. "Hey kid," he said, his voice sounding tired but still steady. "Don't freak out, all right? Just a routine thing." "Routine things don't usually involve overnight stays," I replied, pacing my apartment kitchen with my phone pressed to my ear. He chuckled. "You always were the suspicious one, because you always downplay everything." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough to notice. "Listen," he said finally, his tone shifting slightly. "If anything weird happens—" "Weird?" I interrupted. "What does that mean?" "Nothing," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Just don't let anyone push you around, okay?" I frowned. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Another pause, then a sigh. "I'll explain when I'm out," he said. "Promise." He never got the chance. That conversation didn't match what Karen was telling me, not even close. If everything was handled, why did he sound like that? Why did he say weird? And why did it feel like he was trying to warn me? I barely slept that night. My mind kept running in circles, picking apart every detail, every word, every look Karen gave me. By morning, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to Chicago. Not yet. I started with the obvious, my dad's lawyer. I still had his contact saved in my phone, Mr. Caldwell. I'd met him once years ago when my dad updated his will after marrying Karen. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal, just paperwork. Now it felt like the missing piece. I called his office as soon as they opened. My fingers tapped nervously against the desk as the phone rang. "Caldwell and Associates," a receptionist answered. "Hi, I'm looking for Mr. Caldwell. This is Ethan Carter. My father was Daniel Carter." There was a brief pause, paper shuffling. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Mr. Caldwell retired last year." That hit me harder than I expected. "Retired?" "Yes, sir. His practice was transferred to another attorney. Would you like me to connect you?" "Yes," I said immediately. "Please." A few seconds later, a new voice came on the line. Younger, sharper. "This is Andrew Pierce." I took a breath. "Hi, Mr. Pierce.
My name is Ethan Carter. My father, Daniel Carter, passed away recently. I'm sorry for your loss, he said, professionally. Thank you, I replied. I had a question about his will. There was a pause. I could almost hear him pulling up files. Daniel Carter, he repeated. Yes, I see the account. My heart started to beat faster. I was told there's nothing left, I said carefully, that everything was already handled, but that doesn't make sense to me. Another pause, longer this time. Who told you that? He asked. My stepmother, Karen Carter. Silence, and then something shifted. I think, he said slowly, you should come into my office. My grip tightened on the phone. Why? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. That wasn't reassuring. Can you at least tell me if there is a will? I pressed. Yes, he said, there is. My chest tightened. And, he continued, his voice measured, what you've been told doesn't align with what I'm seeing here. For a second, I couldn't speak. I knew it. I freaking knew it. What does that mean? I finally asked, my voice barely steady. It means, he said, you need to come in as soon as possible. I hung up a few minutes later, my head spinning. Karen lied. Not a misunderstanding, not a miscommunication, a lie. And suddenly everything about the past 3 weeks started to feel different. The way she rushed through the funeral arrangements, the way she avoided specific questions, the way she kept saying everything's handled like a script she had memorized. I grabbed my keys and left the hotel without even thinking. The drive to Pierce's office felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. Every red light felt too long, every turn felt wrong. By the time I got there, my hands were shaking. The building was modern, all glass and steel, completely different from the old office I remembered. I walked in, gave my name, and within minutes I was sitting across from Andrew Pierce. He looked exactly how he sounded. Early 30s, sharp suit, eyes that didn't miss much. Mr. Carter, he said, folding his hands on the desk. I reviewed your father's file before you arrived. I leaned forward. And? He studied me for a moment, like he was deciding how much to say. Your father did leave a will, he said. Relief and anger hit me at the same time.
I knew it. And according to this document, he continued, you are not only included, you are the primary beneficiary. The room went completely still. What? I whispered. Your father's estate, he said carefully, was intended to go almost entirely to you. My pulse was pounding in my ears. That's not what Karen said. I'm aware, he replied. Then where is it? I demanded. Where's the money, the house, everything? He didn't answer right away. And that's when I noticed it. The hesitation. There's a complication, he said finally. My stomach dropped. What kind of complication? He slid a file across the desk toward me. Your father made a last-minute amendment, he said, 2 weeks before his death. I stared at the file, my hand hovering over it. And? I asked. And that amendment, he continued, his voice quieter now, names an additional party with significant control over the estate. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Who? I asked. He met my eyes. Your stepmother. Of course. Of course she was involved. But something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. Control how? I asked. He exhaled slowly. She has the authority to delay, restrict, or even deny distribution. Under certain conditions. The words hit me like a punch. Conditions? I repeated. He nodded. And based on what I'm seeing, he said, she's already started using them. I felt like the ground just disappeared under me. This wasn't just a lie. This was something bigger, something planned. And for the first time since my dad died, I realized something that made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't ignore. He knew this was coming. That's why he said weird. That's why he told me not to let anyone push me around. Because whatever Karen was doing, it wasn't new. I didn't open the file right away. I just stared at it, sitting there on Andrew Pierce's desk like it had weight to it, like it wasn't just paper, but something alive, something that could actually change everything. I thought I knew about my father, about Karen, about the last few weeks of his life. Go ahead, Pierce said quietly. My fingers finally moved. I pulled the file closer and opened it, the sound of the paper shifting louder than it should have been. The first few pages were exactly what I expected. Formal language, legal phrasing, dates,
Signatures. My dad's name typed out in clean black ink. Daniel Carter. Seeing it like that, in something so cold and official, hit harder than I thought it would. But then, I got to the amendment, dated exactly 14 days before he died. I read it once, then again, and then a third time, slower, trying to make sense of what I was actually looking at. Conditional distribution of assets, may be executed or withheld, at the discretion of co-trustee Karen Carter. I read out loud, my voice flat. Pending fulfillment of specified personal and financial criteria. My primary beneficiary, Ethan Carter. I looked up. What the hell does that mean? Pierce leaned back slightly, like he'd been expecting that reaction. It means your stepmother has legal authority to control when, and if, you receive your inheritance. My jaw tightened. Based on what criteria? He pointed to the next section. I looked down again, and that's when the confusion started turning into something darker. Maintain stable employment for a continuous period of no less than 12 months. I blinked. What? Demonstrate financial responsibility and independent housing. My grip on the paper tightened. Abstain from, quote, high-risk personal associations where relationships deemed detrimental to long-term stability. I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. That's not even specific. No. Pierce agreed. It's intentionally vague. I kept reading. Submit to periodic evaluations at the discretion of the co-trustee. I stopped. Slowly lowered the papers. You've got to be kidding me. Pierce didn't say anything. I looked at him, searching for something. Anything that suggested this wasn't as bad as it sounded. But his expression told me everything. This basically gives her control over my life, I said. She can decide I'm not stable enough. And just, what? Hold everything hostage. In a manner of speaking, he said carefully. Yes. I felt my chest tighten. Anger starting to rise in a way that was hard to contain. My dad would never agree to this, I said, shaking my head. This doesn't sound like him. Pierce leaned forward slightly. Are you absolutely sure about that? I froze. What's that supposed to mean? I'm not suggesting anything definitive, he said. But amendments like this don't just appear. Your father signed it. It was witnessed. Legally, it's valid. That doesn't mean he wasn't pressured. I shot back. That's a possibility, he admitted. But it's also something that would need to be proven. I leaned back in the chair, running a hand over my face. This didn't make sense. None of it did. My dad trusted me. He knew me. Yeah, I wasn't perfect. My career path hadn't been exactly linear, and I'd made some questionable decisions in my 20s. But this level of control, no, something was off. Is there anything else? I asked. Pierce hesitated, and I immediately felt that same cold knot form in my stomach again. What? I pressed. There is one more detail, he said. I stared at him. Just say it. He tapped the file lightly. The amendment wasn't your father's idea. Everything inside me went still. What? It was drafted at the request of Karen Carter, he said. Of course it was. But, he continued, your father approved it, signed it willingly, according to the documentation. I let out a slow breath, but it didn't calm me down. If anything, it made the anger sharper. She manipulated him, I said. She had to have. Maybe, Pierce said. Or maybe she convinced him it was necessary. For what? I snapped. To control me from the grave. Pierce didn't answer that. And that silence said more than anything else. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the file again, but not really seeing it. My mind kept going back to that phone call. If anything weird happens, he knew, or at least he suspected something. Can I challenge this? I asked finally. Pierce nodded slowly. You can, but it won't be easy. Why not? Because legally everything appears in order, he said. There's no immediate evidence of coercion, fraud, or incapacity. And without that, the amendment stands. So would I just play along? I asked, disbelief creeping into my voice. That's one option, he said. Meet the conditions. Give her no reason to delay distribution. I almost laughed again. Or, he said, we start looking for inconsistencies. Anything that suggests your father wasn't acting entirely of his own free will. Any evidence that the amendment doesn't reflect his true intentions. I leaned forward again, my focus snapping back into place. Like what? Medical records, witness statements, communication between your father and Karen leading up to the amendment, he said. Anything that paints a different picture. I nodded slowly, because now, this wasn't just about money. This was about the truth. And something in my gut was screaming that Karen wasn't just bending the rules. She was hiding something. I want copies of everything, I said. Pierce didn't hesitate. I'll have my assistant prepare them. I stood up, but I didn't feel steady.
It was like the ground under me had shifted, and I was still trying to find my balance. As I walked toward the door, Pierce spoke again. Mr. Carter. I turned. Be careful, he said. That stopped me. With her? I asked. He held my gaze. With everything. That didn't make me feel better. Not even a little. I didn't go back to the hotel. Instead, I drove straight to the house. I don't even remember making the decision. It just happened. Like something was pulling me there. Karen's car was in the driveway. Of course it was. I sat in my car for a minute, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the front door. Part of me wanted to walk in calmly, play it smart, pretend I didn't know anything yet. But that part didn't win. I got out of the car and walked straight up to the door, my pulse already racing. I didn't knock. I just opened it. Karen, I called out, stepping inside. She appeared from the kitchen almost immediately, like she'd been expecting something. Ethan, she said, her expression shifting from mild surprise to something more guarded. I didn't know you were coming back today. Yeah, I said. Funny how plans change. She studied me for a second, and then she smiled. That same controlled, composed smile. What's wrong? I stepped further into the house, dropping my keys on the table a little harder than necessary. You lied to me, I said. Her expression didn't change. About what? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Don't do that, I said. Don't play dumb. She crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. I'm not playing anything, Ethan. If you have something to say, just say it. I took a step closer. There is a will, I said, and I'm the primary beneficiary. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes, just for a second, but I saw it, and that was enough. Ah, she said softly. Yeah, I replied. Ah. She exhaled slowly, like she was recalibrating. I was going to explain that to you, she said. When? I snapped. After I just walked away and never questioned it? That's not fair, she said. No, what's not fair is you telling me my father left me nothing when that's not even close to the truth. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked past me into the living room, sitting down like she wasn't in a hurry at all. Like she had time, like she wasn't worried. That pissed me off even more. You also didn't mention the amendment, I continued, following her. The one that gives you control over everything. That got her attention. She looked up at me, her expression now completely different. Calm, but not defensive, calculated. I didn't think you'd understand it right away, she said. I stared at her. Try me. She leaned back slightly, folding her hands in her lap. Your father was concerned about you, she said. I felt something twist in my chest. Concerned? I repeated. Yes, she said. Your instability, your patterns. My patterns? I echoed, disbelief creeping in. You've changed jobs 3 times in 5 years, she said calmly. You've had, 4 serious relationships that didn't last? You tend to act impulsively, Ethan. That doesn't justify this, I shot back. It does to someone who wanted to make sure you didn't ruin your future, she replied. I shook my head, anger boiling over now. No, I said,
That sounds like something you wanted. Her eyes sharpened slightly. Be careful, she said. With what? I challenged. With accusing me of things you don't understand, she said, her voice still controlled, but colder now. I stepped closer. Then help me understand, I said, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you convinced my dad to hand you control over everything. She held her gaze. And then, slowly, she smiled again. But this time it wasn't polite, it wasn't soft, it was something else entirely. You're assuming he needed convincing, she said. The room felt colder. What does that mean? I asked. She tilted her head slightly, studying me like I was a problem she already solved. It means, she said quietly, you don't know everything about your father. A chill ran down my spine. Because something in the way she said that, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a threat. I didn't respond right away. I just stood there, staring at her, trying to figure out if that was supposed to scare me, or if it was just another one of her calculated moves to throw me off balance. You're right, I said finally. My voice quieter now, but tighter. Maybe I don't know everything. Her smile didn't fade. That bothered me more than if she had gotten defensive. But I know enough, I continued. I know my dad wouldn't just hand over control of his entire estate without a reason. And I know he wouldn't shut me out without at least telling me why. Karen crossed one leg over the other, completely at ease in a way that made my skin crawl. You're still thinking emotionally, she said. That's always been your problem. I let out a breath through my nose. And what are you thinking? Strategically? Practically, she corrected. Right, I muttered. Because lying to me about the will is practical. I didn't lie, she said. I laughed, sharper this time. You told me there was nothing left. There's nothing available to you right now, she replied, without hesitation. That's not the same thing. That's a technicality, I snapped. It's accuracy, she said, her tone firm. For a second, I just looked at her, trying to process how easily she twisted things, how calmly she sat there like this wasn't a complete betrayal. You really thought I wouldn't find out? I asked. She shrugged slightly. I assumed you'd come to me first before running to a lawyer. That hit a nerve. Maybe I would have, I said, if I thought you were actually being honest with me. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction. Careful, Ethan. There it was again, that warning tone, like she was reminding me of something I hadn't fully grasped yet. Or what? I challenged. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned forward, resting her elbows lightly on her knees, her gaze locked onto mine. Or you might start digging into things you're not prepared to understand, she said. A slow, cold feeling spread through my chest. I think I'm already there, I replied. For the first time, her expression shifted, not much, but enough. Something sharper, something more serious. Then let me give you some advice, she said. Stop. I actually smiled at that. Yeah, that's not happening. She studied me for a long moment, like she was weighing something. And then she leaned back again, her composure snapping right back into place. All right, she said. Then don't say I didn't warn you. I shook my head, frustrated, confused, and more determined than ever. This isn't over, I said. I never said it was, she replied. I turned and walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. But as soon as I got into my car, the adrenaline started to fade, and something else took its place. Doubt. Not about her. About him. You don't know everything about your father. The words kept echoing in my head. I gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, trying to push it out, but it stuck. Because the truth was, there were things I didn't know. Of course there were. Everyone thinks they know their parents until something cracks the surface. And right now, everything felt cracked.
I didn't go back to the hotel again. Instead, I drove to the one place that still felt solid, my dad's old office. He had retired from his corporate job years ago, but he kept a small private workspace downtown, a quiet second-floor office above a closed-down bookstore. It wasn't anything fancy, just a place where he handled personal finances, paperwork, random projects. He always said it helped him think. Karen never used it. She didn't even like it, said it smelled like dust and old paper. Which meant, if there was anything he didn't want her to touch, it would be there. The building looked exactly the same as I remembered. Faded brick, narrow staircase, a flickering light at the entrance that probably hadn't been fixed in years. I parked across the street and just sat there for a second, staring up at the dark windows. This felt different, more personal, more dangerous somehow. Because this wasn't about confronting Karen anymore. This was about finding out who my father really was in those last weeks, and whether I was ready for that. I grabbed the spare key from the glove compartment. He had given it to me years ago, just in case, and walked up the stairs. The door creaked when I opened it. The smell hit me immediately. Paper, wood, that faint trace of his aftershave that somehow still lingered. It felt like stepping into a memory. I closed the door behind me slowly, the quiet wrapping around me. Everything was still there. The desk, the filing cabinets, the old coffee mug he never threw out, even though it had a crack running down the side. For a moment, I just stood there, because this was the first place since he died that actually felt like him, not like the house, which already felt altered. This was untouched, unfiltered. I walked over to the desk, running my hand lightly across the surface. A thin layer of dust came off on my fingers. No one had been here. Good. I started with the obvious, the drawers. Pens, notebooks, random receipts, nothing important at first glance. But I kept going, methodical, trying not to miss anything. Then I moved to the filing cabinet. It was locked. Of course it was. I paused, thinking, and then I remembered. Bottom drawer of the desk. I pulled it open again, digging through until I found it, a small metal box tucked in the back corner. Inside it were keys, a lot of them. I exhaled slowly. Please work, I muttered. The third key I tried clicked. I opened the cabinet and immediately knew this wasn't just random paperwork. Everything inside was organized, labeled, intentional. I scanned the folders quickly. Taxes, investments, property records, normal stuff. But then something caught my eye, a folder with no label. That alone was strange. My dad labeled everything. I pulled it out, my pulse picking up slightly. Inside were documents, but not the kind I expected. Printed emails, bank statements, and photos. I frowned, flipping through them. The emails were between my dad and someone named L. Monroe. I didn't recognize the name. The tone of the messages was tense, careful, like two people trying to say things without saying them directly. This arrangement can't continue like this. You said it would stay contained. Karen doesn't know everything. I froze. Karen doesn't know everything. My heart started pounding again. What the hell was this? I flipped to the next page, another email. If Ethan finds out, it complicates everything. My name. That wasn't a coincidence. That was intentional. I swallowed hard, continuing to read. We need to finalize before it's too late. You promised this wouldn't come back on me. My hands tightened around the papers. This wasn't just financial stuff. This was something else, something hidden. Then I saw the bank statements. Large transfers, repeated, going to an account I didn't recognize, under the name L. Monroe. And then the photos. I picked one up. It was my dad, standing outside what looked like a small house, next to a woman. Blonde, late 30s, maybe early 40s. They weren't just standing next to each other. They were close, too close. The kind of close you don't question when you're in it, but you definitely notice when you're not supposed to see it. My stomach dropped. No, I whispered. I grabbed another photo. Same woman, different location. This time they were sitting together at what looked like a cafe, leaning in, smiling, comfortable, intimate. This wasn't a business associate. This wasn't casual. This was something real, something personal, something hidden. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs, because suddenly Karen's words came rushing back. You don't know everything about your father. I staggered back slightly, dropping into the chair behind the desk. This didn't make sense, or maybe it did, and I just didn't want it to. My dad, having an affair, sending money to another woman, hiding it from Karen, from me. I ran a hand through my hair, my thoughts spiraling. No, there had to be more to it. There had to be context, because this changed everything. The will, the amendment, Karen's control, all of it suddenly felt connected in a way I didn't understand yet, but I was starting to see the shape of it, and it wasn't simple, not even close. I looked back down at the photo in my hand, at the way he was looking at her, and for the first time since this all started, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just anger, not just confusion, but betrayal. From him.